Yo, what's shaking, everybody? Welcome to another Overreaction Monday show here on the Orange Bloods Texas Football Channel, brought to you by RogueShop.com. If you just need to feel a little bit better, sleep a little bit better, have your aches and pains feel a little bit better, RogueShop.com, use the promo code OrangeBloods. They will hook you up. As a matter of fact, we haven't done this in a while. Today's a gummy day, Anwar.
Today's a gummy day.
Today's a gummy day. We will pick a winner out of the chat section today to win some of the gummies that we have previously given away from RogueShop.com. It's been like a month or so since we've done that, and I know he wanted us to keep that up. So Rogue Shop's hooking it up today with the gummies. I don't know yet how we will decide who gets the gummies. One time we just gave the gummies to somebody who spent like $100 with the super chat. See, we already got it right now. Room temperature Bush Light is like, hey, he's putting a flag down, Anwar. Look at me. I like you guys. I just want to say hello. I do like Kai's here. This is pretty spot on. Overreaction show should be the permanent name for Orange Bloods. What are y'all doing? It's been known to happen from time to time. Look, I've already said all the important things. Pay attention to Rogue Shop. Use the promo code. Yeah. We'll give some gummies away.
And I talked to Richard over the weekend from Rogue and had a chance to actually FaceTime with him and his wife. They've got a new shop that they're opening up, a kind of brick and mortar thing. And they've been working on it, and really his wife does all the work. Richard is just kind of there here and there. She, as you know, in any relationship, it's wifey who usually holds it together. But they got a lot of great things going. They've got way more products than we talk about.
Oh, I know.
They had like a bath wash I saw in there, and bath salts, and I mean they've got anything you can imagine. They've got it hooked up. They got drinks, power drinks. Catch. They have power drinks that have like the CBD kind of stuff, and I don't know if they had THC or not, but just even the power, instead of getting a 5-hour energy, you can get something from Rogue. They got it all.
It kind of reminds me in Breaking Bad when Walt and Skyler take over the car wash, and he's like, yeah, we got this badass car wash, but she's the one that's running the day-to-day specials and doing the bookkeeping and like doing the hard work. Shout out to the Mr. and Mrs. Walter White of Orange Bloods. I know there's got to be a good chance that he's creeping into the chat, if not already, soon to be. Hopefully he'll find that funny. All right, so look, there's a lot of stuff for us to talk to about during the show. We should start with just our overreactions. It was some weekend, Anwar.
Boy, was it a weekend? What? Did anything happen over the weekend? Did you and I get thrashed on social media this weekend?
So I call that Friday, Saturday, and Sunday in my world. Life. But yes, some would say that it was an interesting weekend. I have an overreaction that might not be an overreaction. It's just kind of a reaction take in general. But I would love for you to lead off with an overreaction going into this Monday episode.
Okay. I got an overreaction based off of Steve Sarkisian's press conference today.
Okay.
So I can give you my overreaction to that, or we can start with your reaction. Which one would you prefer? Because I got an overreaction to today.
We'll go into the overreaction.
Okay. Staying with the theme of the show. Catch, my biggest overreaction on this Monday is that Steve Sarkisian, I don't want to say sounded the alarm or rang the bell, but I think Steve Sarkisian tried to let it be known to everybody in the Longhorn Nation, pump the brakes on high expectations for the upcoming season. Like, I think he let it very well be known, and it may have been subtle, and so subtle that you potentially missed it. And I don't mean you, Catch, I just mean the general audience. But I asked, Catch, one of the things I wrote about on Sunday Obviously, it was about Quinn Ewers in the Sunday Pulpit. If you haven't had a chance to check it out, please do. And I kind of talked a little bit about the growing pains of what's, I won't say grow, I didn't use that word, but knowing that, hey, it's going to take this kid a while. So when I asked Sarkisian about the leash, what kind of leash do you have to give a guy like this, especially coming off such a close quarterback battle? He said, he goes, I think naturally we're going to have some growing pains. And he goes, we're not only relatively young at quarterback, but then he added in, we're relatively a young team. So he didn't just say it was a QB thing. He talked about overall how that's going to be. Now he gets in there and talk about what we got to really do is really good job as a staff, put your players in a position to learn through tough situations. He talked about the things that did in scrimmages, the end zone, things to that effect, right? But then he also goes, he finishes up that whole paragraph, Catch. He goes, but I'm a realist. We're going to have some growing pains. Second time he said that, Catch. But that's okay. I still think we're a pretty good football team. I think we've got some really key veterans and key spots that can help alleviate some of that. But he's already letting you know, Catch, I'm expecting this. I don't know. I don't believe we are a finished product. And here's the other thing, Catch, as far as that, my opening overreaction that builds off of that. Steve Sarkisian was also asked, and I think it was actually Chip that asked the question, in the season opener last year, you said both quarterbacks would play. Is that still going to be the case this year? And he said no. He said pretty much, essentially, unless something happens, he's staying, obviously, with Quinn Ewers. Now, some of that's going to be, Catch, they obviously, he needs all the reps he can get. But some of that's also saying to yourself, I don't know if I'm going to have a ton of blowouts where I definitely think that's going to be a thing. Like, I don't know if I'm going to be 50-10 heading into the fourth quarter, and I think that's going to be the thing. So I think, Catch, for me, my biggest overreaction on this Monday is that Steve Sarkisian let us know multiple times there's going to be growing pains. That points towards another building season. He says they're going to be – he's got to like this team, but that's my overreaction, Catch. He let everyone know, just be easy. It may not be a Big 12 or bust kind of season.
I mean, I think those hints have been coming for a while. I thought that one of the things that we got from Sark was realistic Sark today. I mean, he talked about the quarterback position and made a point to, hey, there'll be some ups and downs. Everybody needs to be prepared for mistakes. He talked about this, it's funny. Sometimes an excuse is nothing more than the reason why something happens. I say that all the time. I think he says things like 57 freshmen and sophomores, and people hear excuse, and in his mind, reason. Why are you 4-2? Really young roster. God, that's a bullshit excuse, right? I mean, you can hear fans say, we ain't trying to hear that. But quarterback's a redshirt freshman on the offensive line. Tight ends really never started a game before. You go over to the defensive side of the ball, you got the same thing. You got a kicking game full of guys that have never played before. It is an inexperienced team. It is an inexperienced team at very critical positions. And in places where there are not inexperienced players, there are older players who've been failures by and large that led to a 5-7 season. So I didn't really have like an overreaction to his commentary. It was like, I wonder if people are listening. Because remember last year he talked about competing for a Big 12 championship all throughout the preseason. We haven't really that's not really been the thing that he's been saying a lot. I just wanted to make sure I threw that in there. Go ahead. No, and I wonder, it's probably a really good question just to ask him, but you think, the Big 12 championship thing went into October last year. It wasn't like halfway through the season he felt like his team wasn't capable of doing that. This year, you're right. We're not quite getting the same level of bravado going into the season about what this team is capable of. And look, I talk to people who feel like they know Sark. Feel like they've got a good handle on where his head is. And the sense I get is that he's in a very realistic position, that he knows that this is a team that's got some work to do. This is the team with a really young quarterback that all of the pieces haven't come into place yet. And he may be all gas, no brakes, but maybe a little bit of brakes. Maybe all gas crashes you into the side of a hill. It's all gas and sometimes a brake. And that's maybe what today was. But I came away, there are times when Sark comes across to me as incredibly genuine and says a lot of quiet things out loud. And I thought that was today. I think there are some other days when he's more of a traditional head football coach who's not trying, whose goal through a press conference isn't to say anything at all. And I think today was kind of an honesty session. And maybe that's because the pressure of naming the quarterback is over. It's not like anybody showed up today and was like, hey, coach, when are you guys going to finally announce who the defensive tackles are? Who is Byron Murphy your number one defensive tackle, or is he still behind Keon? You know what I mean? They don't do that elsewhere. It's like, hey, has Gunnar Helm officially the number 2 tight end, or is that Jatavian? You know what I mean? Position by position, those battles don't take the weight of the quarterback battle. And maybe by having that over with, it's the first time in a month that he didn't have to answer that question in that way. I thought it was interesting that he was pretty adamant about, hey, it's Quinn Ewers' show, because it is an about-face 180-degree turn from what took place a year ago at this exact time of the year when he made his announcement. Weirdly, last year when he made his announcement, he spent the entire time building up Casey Thompson as his backup quarterback. And in that first press conference, didn't even mention Hudson Card. Didn't say what he liked about him. Didn't say what it was that made him make that decision. He focused on Casey Thompson and made a point to say that both guys would play. And today was much less about Hudson Card, although he did say, hey, we're going to need Hudson Card at some point if we're going to be a championship team. That guy's going to likely have to be a part of it. But there wasn't a lot of talk there. There was zero commitment to ever seeing Hudson Card in a game. And most of the conversation centered around his starter. It felt like a different conversation than the one that was taking place roughly 12 months ago. And you and I both wrote this weekend columns that stressed there really does now need to be a commitment to Quinn Ewers. That kid is the kid that you want to fly into the stratosphere someday. Now you need to let him really learn how to fly. If the plan is to jump on his back someday and have him take you somewhere, you can't bring him out of flight every 5 seconds because problems arise. You got to let him fly through those things. And that's a big part of now what this 2022 season becomes. It is with all due respect to Bijan and anybody else on this team, it's the Quinn Ewers break-in year. And there are going to be some weeks where the storyline is Quinn took big steps. And there may be some weeks throughout the year where we go, yeah, Quinn not quite being at that level yet may have cost the team a game. Those are the growing pains that you go through in order to one day have an elite quarterback.
Yeah, and it's clear that Quinn's the guy come hell or high water, right? I mean, that was one of the questions you had asked. We were talked about last week in one of the shows. Does Hudson play? At what point does he come in? Things to that effect. And he's blatantly being no, this is the guy we're going to learn with. This is the guy that we're going to grow with. I know there's going to be ups and downs, but again, knowing that, growing means planting, planting, that means, you've got to wait for some sort of harvest to occur. And so he's letting you know, hey, this is my guy, but also understand, yes, he's very good. He's also very talented, but he did say something in there. He goes, this guy should really be a true freshman right now from a development standpoint. But he started talking about the positives of Ohio State, at least being on campus, but understanding that, yes, Bijan, all these kind of guys, have aspirations. Absolutely. Those guys are absolutely talented, but also understanding that this guy is young. So let's let the Tom G super chat since it's on the screen.
Yeah, I wasn't trying to cut you off. I was just.
No, it's okay. It's okay. Tom G's a good guy. He's going.
I was just setting the table, considering he did have a $20 chat session, and apparently he was in Jamaica, so he wanted to.
Oh yeah. He went to Sandals. He went to Sandals.
Low key, brag that he had a good weekend.
He went to Sandals.
Catch Anwar. Anwar loved the Jamaica trip. In Ewers we trust. Is Banks okay? Did he get dinged up, or was it all Williams and confusion? Anwar, I'll let you have that one.
Well, whenever I think of Jamaica, not only think of my trip, I think of The Office and Michael Scott when he came back doing his feeling hot. And then the Jan picture that eventually gets revealed. So,
revealed as in plastered on the side of the warehouse.
As far as Banks is concerned, he'll be back in practice tomorrow. Sarkisian did have it as a minor injury. We had it as a minor injury actually over the weekend is what I meant to say. But Sarkisian says he'll be back. And not only Banks will be back, but there was a lot of other positive notes here. Let me just go back to what I had posted so I can tell you from the other injury standpoint, since you did mention injuries. Let's see. It was Roshan Johnson and Jahdae Barron are supposed to return to practice this week. He didn't say if they'd be limited or not, but he did say they will be back this week. Troy O'Meary and Cole Hudson did return to practice this week. The Kelvin Banks one was obviously a minor injury. And then I did ask about Ajay Hall, and he said, Ajay is doing all the necessary things right now, said he was pleased. But was going to leave the update at that point. So at least Ajay Hall seems to be trending in the right direction. Good
for him, by the way. You know what I mean? Like, I bet one of the things that kid doesn't hear a lot is attaboy. That, it's always pointing the finger of the things that he didn't do or whatever. And, the guy's been walking the straight and narrow for a week now. Coach is giving him a little bit of a shout out and saying we're pleased with the direction things are going in. Attaboy, Ajay, keep that up. Because if he can keep that up, there's a place for him on this team, Anwar, to, I think, have the injury to Isaiah Nayors was screamed, Ajay Hall, come on down.
Yeah.
And where you wondered 2 weeks ago, where does that playing time come from in a year where last year the coaches didn't rotate receivers like it was a Tom Herman kind of offense. They went with their guys, and now you can kind of see where that is. I'm rooting for Ajay Hall. Good to hear that there was a good report early on today. Are you ready for my mini overreaction?
Yeah.
You ever seen the movie Good Morning Vietnam with Robin Williams?
Yeah, but it's an
older movie.
It's a long time ago. Was it
an older
80s?
Movie?
Yeah.
But there's this one guy, in the Air Force, that's constantly busting Robin Williams' balls. Adrian Cronauer is the character's name. He's a DJ in the movie. And every time this guy does something, he's got this one guy in the armed service that's just always trying to get him in trouble, always trying to get him to go to Guam, always just trying to undermine what he's trying to do. And after it happens later in the movie, they're standing outside these office doors, and Adrian Cronauer turns to his superior officer and says, "You are in more dire need of a blowjob than any white man in history." And it kind of it's a hell of a goodbye, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking about the Texas fan base today. I was just thinking about the last 12 years. Because I was thinking a lot about my biggest misses in my career. So in order to do that, I had to go like year by year to look at what might qualify during any given moment. And I just, start going through it and you're like, oh yeah, 2011, it's Austin. That happened because Texas went 5-7 and had to fire their entire coaching staff. And then they did hire a coach for 24 hours, but he quit. That's right. That was one of my big mistakes. Wasn't that awesome? And then you just start thinking about the games, the misses, the misery, I give you permission to dream big. In 2016, all year long, I had maintained that I would refuse to predict that Texas could win more than 7 games. And then twice they win 2 games at the beginning of the 2016 season. And I'm so thirsty for us to have a good football product to follow. I'm telling people, dream, baby, dream, as if I had completely forgotten everything that I had said up until the 2 weeks prior, or 2 days prior. I just realized it's been a long time since Texas fans have been happy. And it's a bit of a metaphor. In this case, the BJ.
I'm still waiting for you to connect that dot. I'm holding on to the story.
They need a really good season in a really bad way. Just like Adrian Cronauer was telling his superior officer that he needed a BJ more than any man in history. I'm starting to look at the Texas fan base and look at the reactions to just anything. This weekend, and I wrote about this in my 10 thoughts from the weekend. Over the weekend, Texas had a bunch of big money donors come in. The purpose of having the big money donors come in was to get together to talk about NIL projects, fundraising. How do they get more pancake factories out there? How do they get so that every football player on the roster is making 50 G's? It takes more money. It takes more people donating money. And part of this weekend was getting those people together so that then they could hear presentations and updates on how things are going. And then then they would give money. And it would be a really, that was the goal. Get all these dudes together, inform them, hopefully get cash from them. And it was a big part of the Saturday scrimmage process. I believe we talked, I don't know what parents were and were not invited to the scrimmage, but apparently there were some parents that didn't get invites. But if you donated a lot of money, you got an invite. And on Saturday, he posted a tweet that was like, hey, the football team's having a scrimmage today and a whole bunch of rich guys are going to be there. Like, it should be an interesting day. And people could not quote why they were mad at you. They could not take anything that you said and said, that's a problem. Instead, they imagined this weird innuendo and like ran off with it and tried to make it sound like you were doing this and you were trying to allege that Steve Sarkisian and made his quarterback decision based off of the big money donors. And then and I just found myself looking at the fan base that did that a lot for about 72 hours and just thought to themselves, this is a fan base that needs a 10-win season worse than any fan base in history. It has been a long time since this group has been happy. It has been a long time since they've truly felt that they were on the way to something bigger without smoke and mirrors. And I just so desperately hope that in the coming months, it can be a little bit of that. Because when we make mistakes, it's one, look, if you and I make a mistake, and we deserve to be kind of called out over it, right? We got the quarterback deal wrong. I reported that it was expected that Hudson Card was going to be the starter, and then that ends up being wrong. And then so there's the deserved kind of, I don't know, steel chair over the head that you get in such a moment. But it was so much more than that this weekend. There was so much angst flowing in every direction. And it really did make me think that this program just needs some good things to happen to it, because I feel like everybody is just so quick and trigger happy to go in the wrong direction and be angry. They need some BJs.
I mean, BJs are 10 wins.
They can be both. They can be both.
Yes, I think, can we combine it, the two, and what in the celebration. So it's interesting, so there's a lot of different variations of it. I've been having some thoughts about it, after all that happened, so can I read you just read the text and try to maybe bring a little clarity, even though I still address everything. I said, Texas will hold another scrimmage on Saturday morning, close to the public and media. However, a lot of big money donors will be in attendance today, because I didn't want people to think when they started hearing about stuff and they're like, oh, well, you guys said it was closed, so on and so forth. But here was the kicker, and this is why everything got lost. I said they were invited to attend before the Quinn Ewers announcement, and we'll get to see him run with the ones today. Now, that's the thing. For me, Ketch, what I was trying to say was, hey, guys, these guys were set up a while ago. This has nothing to do with this whole innuendo of, hey, this is the decision. I literally was trying to say this was pre-planned, has nothing to do with anything current or anything that just happened. However, Ketch, as you know, that was not how it was interpreted. Now, here's the thing. I did hear from folks throughout the day that said, I have no clue what people are upset about. It totally made sense to me. And there's this weird thing, Ketch. And then, of course, that involved, it becomes this weird thing where you see someone will say, your tweet was posted on TexAgs. This is a problem. I'm like, when do you ever care about what's posted on TexAgs? Like, ever? When is TexAgs, no disrespect, Billy's cool, but when did TexAgs become the thing where we're like, man, those guys are clowning us? And that's my life is just so hurt. Like, you don't give a shit about what they say at TexAgs, but it's almost like someone gave this really good analogy. I don't know if it was on Twitter or not, but they said it's directly to you, and it may have been on OB. But they said, a lot the expectation sometimes is these websites should be a PR extension of the program, and so if something comes out that they feel like puts it in a negative light, there's going to be an overreaction to it. But there was an overreaction just in general, because it wasn't. The last thing I'll say on this, it wasn't. And yes, we need success, because look, if we're the biggest talking points of the weekend, and you and I are bigger talking points than Quinn Ewers, which to be the thing that everyone was happy about and everyone was celebrating, for us to be the talking points was interesting, because there was other people, Ketch, who reported stuff pretty much identical. There was only one group of people that everyone was focused on. We definitely need some wins. We definitely need this fan base to enjoy themselves. I think the best time I ever had covering this team, Ketch, was after the Sugar Bowl. That entire offseason was like the most fun for me. When it's tensions like this, it's just kind of like that. And can I just say one more thing as relates to that? For those who theorize that this was some master plan and plot by Steve Sarkisian, do you like hear what you're saying? What you're saying is, instead of him spending time, Ketch, working on game plans, getting ready for practices, film study, reviews, like talking to players, talking to recruits, talking to NIL people, all the things that are really involved in this job. You want to, in your head, believe he sat down with John Bianco and said, okay, listen, I know I can be focused on this other stuff as relates to my job, but I want to play a trick on the media. Like, if you really want to believe that's what your coach is doing, I'm going to tell you, you should be really scared about the upcoming season. Really freaking out that if you think that's what he's doing. I don't think that's what he's doing. I don't think it's his puppet master that was like, man, F the game plan. How can I get at the media? I don't buy it.
Well, and the other part of this is some of these people with their words are basically just suggesting that Sark is a punk, that he took his orders from some alum who saw that he was going to do one thing and then took a phone call. And there's like one person in all of the burnt orange universe that's supposed to be an expert on the quarterback position, that's developed first round draft picks. It's done it at USC and Washington and has done it in the NFL, went to Alabama. Like, they hired this guy for a reason. It's mostly for quarterbacks. He makes, no matter what his decision would have been, the idea that somebody would have called him up and been like, yo, I know you've been with them in all of practice. I know you know more than I do. But, yo, I got NIL money, or I got a bet, or you just need to do what I tell. It's just, in order for that to actually have been a real world, you have to then like go to the place where it's like your coach is like, okay, I was going to have a starting quarterback, but now I'll just flip it around because Red McCombs called and put me in my place. Like, it's like saying it, like work it all the way out how it works. That's just not the reality. It's not. And here's the thing: if it was even remotely close to the reality, it'd be coming out real fast. The agents would be talking. Sark would be whispering into people's ears. Like, trust me, that stuff, if it ever gets to that level, it will go out national before it goes regional. Remember, who did Charlie turn to? Kirk Herbstreit. He went where he was like, you know what? The moment I got a problem with the cesspool, I'll go to somebody with a really big voice and let them scream some really absurd stuff. I think, again, everybody just needs to relax and stop worrying about Oklahoma fans and A&M. They're trying to put you on tilt. That's what they're trying to do. It's just not a big deal. Honestly, they're not a big deal. You know what's a big deal? Winning games when the season starts. Because a lot of what we're doing right now and the month leading up to the game will all be rendered meaningless as soon as the first game against Louisiana Monroe kicks off. At that point, the only thing that will count in the way of verbiage is what happens on the field with this team in the schedule. This is a byproduct of a long 9-month layoff during the dead season. Didn't have a bowl game. Season ends kind of cruddy. You know, this is 2 more months, Anwar. We would have probably wanted to put our heads in like a doorway and just slam them real hard, because I'm ready for some football, because I'm ready for all of this rhetoric of what should the team do and what's a good record. Is Quinn Ewers going to be any good? I just want to see it now. Just show me the baby. Show me the baby. And I did think there were some other interesting things that happened at the scrimmage over the weekend, that if you take away the quarterback stuff, I think that, you know, the wide receivers continue to look good. I heard more about Jordan Whittington after this scrimmage,
my man,
than I have about Jordan Whittington probably ever after an event like that. You know, Xavier Worthy had a big day. And it feels like we're going to say that every Saturday with Xavier Worthy.
Yeah.
Sounds like the tight end position had a good day.
Oh, Catch. Let me tell you this. Speaking of tight end, Jatavian Sanders, Sark talked about him today, and he said, I know Xavier and Jordan Whittington may take exception to this, but Jatavian has the best hands of any receiver on the team.
Interesting.
Yeah. That came out of his mouth today.
And I had multiple people mention Jatavian Sanders and just kind of say, damn. he physically looks good. He's impressive, you know. I think defensively you were hearing good things. It's as much as the offense has been a bit of a turnover machine, this defense a year ago couldn't create big plays and turnovers. Now, it's a zero-sum game when you're having practice against your teammates. But this has been a Longhorn defense that has created a lot of turnovers during practice over the course of this entire month. They created more pick sixes and more turnovers in the scrimmage. And, you know, one of them, a walk-on wide receiver falls down, and they're going to be tip ball. You think the defense cares? Make the plays, make the turnovers, make the game-changing things that get stickers put on your helmet. I think that's a group that is trying to make monumental progress during this offseason leading up to that first game. And one of the things that you would say they weren't a year ago, they've been that this month. And now we wait to see if that kind of turnover creating transfers itself over to the season. But I tell you this, had they not been creating turnovers in practice, we'd be sitting here on the 21st or 22nd of August, whatever it is, saying things like, well, all last year, this group wasn't creating turnovers, couldn't get interceptions, couldn't get to the quarterbacks. And here we are in practice, not hearing a lot about the defense creating plays. I gave an attaboy to Ajay Hall for doing the thing that he needs to be doing. I'll give an attaboy to the Texas defense for doing the things so far in camp, creating big plays that they didn't do a year ago in games. Now, Anwar, they have to do them in games. But up until now, they can only do what they can do. And we have heard both quarterbacks having turnovers throughout the August practices. We've heard about the ball hitting the ground. We've heard occasionally guys getting to the quarterbacks. It is at least optimism on that side of the ball where there's been some doom and gloom.
Yeah, I mean, you know, one of the strengths of the team that we hear people, you know, talking about is the defense. And, you know, knowing that, hey, there's going to be some challenges on the offense this year just because of, you know, the line and just getting that cohesiveness. Not that there's a lack of talent, but it's just getting that cohesive thing developed. That's going to take time. But we've heard great things about, you know, what they do in the defensive line and guys who have stood out and guys who are emerging. And Vernon Broughton, you know, as you said, is a guy. We've heard about Jalen Ford all offseason long. I think he was one of these videos we did early in the year. He was kind of my prediction of a guy that, you know, kind of would stand on the table for. I forget one of those videos that we did. You know, we've heard great things about what they're doing for the defensive backfield, you know, whether it's the safeties, whether it's the Jared Thompsons of the world, you know, what he's been able to do with Deshaun Jameson, you know, as well. I mean, we heard great things, you know, about what this defense is. And hell, Catch, I mean, I swear every scrimmage, it seems like there's a bunch of pick sixes. I mean, from this defense. So it is some positive news. It's a positive report. I think it has to carry over. You know, I think, you know, of course we get a little gun shy because of what happened last year and what we thought was going to happen and what eventually happened. But, you know, the big point is they just got to be able to carry over to the season and be able to do it when it counts.
Anything else from the weekend just grab you?
From the weekend? No. I think for the most part, I think everything kind of went the way that we would have expected it. You know, so we gave the Banks kind of update, but, you know, here obviously we heard that Quinn did well. There's nothing else. You know, the only thing from the weekend that grabs me and sticks with me is just, you know, I said this before, and then one of my sources kind of checked it with me late. Special teams, it could be a challenge this season. Like, it's so underrated. It's an underrated portion, but they told me, the kicking game struggled a little bit. They told me maybe the punter wasn't as sharp as he had been. It's just the one thing, the aspect that I think we got to continue to monitor throughout the year.
Let's do a few super chat questions so we can catch up to them all. Tom said, buy or sell, Taft will have a scholarship offer by next season. I've actually heard that a lot from a few different people over the course of the last week, that they think he'll end up being that kind of guy that gets named on scholarship. I will say one of the things that makes it tougher to do that now is there's no 25-man scholarship number. So as much as you'd like, let me give you an example. Let's say they're sitting on 84. And it's like, oh, we're one short. We could just give that to Taft. He's been so good. And as a walk-on, like, he's so deserving. And then, it could be, well, hey, man, there's a linebacker in the portal from Florida A&M that, could help our depth right away. I feel like it'll be even more difficult for walk-ons in the future to get those numbers, because coaches are like thirst trapping in the portal to get as many guys as they can get. I think the probability is a buy, but, FYI, just so you know.
Listen. I've said this before. Don't go too far. Don't allow me to say this. I've said this before. I'm going to say it again. Michael Taft was the guy who was hosting and recruiting Arch Manning. For that and that alone, Michael Taft deserves a scholarship. I will stand on the table to say any guy who developed a bond with the best quarterback in the country, developed a relationship, and that became his boy, and that's the guy he was hanging with and his host and all these other kind of things, that guy, or that alone, deserves a scholarship. Free Michael Taft. I need this man. It's a crime that he's not on scholarship at this moment. Not only, he's a good ball player. So let's take that out of the equation for a second. But actually, we've heard good practice reports about Taft and what he's been able to do, even running with some of the backups. So he's a good ball player, but that guy freaking deserves a scholarship. I will take that one to my grave. It's an injustice that he does not have.
I think it will eventually happen. I'm just saying.
It's an injustice that it hasn't happened yet.
If it was me and I was a college coach and I had a chance to reward a walk-on, or at the very last second something opened up in the portal, I'd go get Tariq Milton. And people would be like, why are they taking 3 wide receivers in the class? And I'd be like, because you just never know. It's a chance to build the team up. And then as soon as a guy gets hurt, it's like, aha! Sorry about that walk-on thing, but really happy we have Tariq Milton from Iowa State.
By the way, David, just for clarity, I'm not clearly you understand that Arch Manning didn't come here from Michael Taft. Like, I hope you can get a little bit of the tongue-in-cheek that I'm talking about. He was
Those clarifications are important, Anwar.
Clearly. So now you get attacked and say, Anwar says Art can't recruit, and it's all because of Michael Taft and the players.
Now I know you've been burned, right? Like by the center of the sun, because I feel that way too sometimes. Like, oh, wait a minute, let me clarify. I joked the other day I might have to have some fist fights with some sources. By the end of the night, I was like, just so you guys know, no actual invitations. The fist fight sources took place.
Yeah.
So you know, none of us met at Wachovia and signed contracts and fought with like oversized boxing gloves. Like, none of that happened. The room temperature Bush Light says, can we talk about our freshman O-lineman next? Look, Banks is doing a good job. Banks be back in practice tomorrow. I think you'll see Hudson and DJ Campbell continue the battle for that right guard spot. There's a part of me that thinks that DJ Campbell's one of those guys that if he's leaving, he's leaving, and he kind of has been in that spot for the last week. it'll be interesting to see if Hudson ends up being a guy that can just get right back into the 50-50 type of rotation. But they're doing good. I mean, was Sark asked about those guys today?
Not about the offensive linemen, but I do know everything that you said has been good. It's as far as on point, as far as Banks is concerned, about DJ is concerned. He was also mentioned that there's been, Cam Williams has come along. But one of my people that saw him over the weekend said, they like him. Just obviously he's got some work to do. But I think what you got to also understand now, as relates to the entire conversation, as far as freshman offensive linemen, they've got their guys, who are probably going to be in the 2 deep. We're about 2 weeks away, from the season opener. The battling for positioning is kind of over at this moment. Now it's just about game prep. So, you just got to hope those guys sit and learn, and get, work on their body's physique, and then get ready, to battle again for positioning next year.
Cody Phillips asked earlier in the chat, what incentives make sources give info to reporters? Anwar, can I take that one?
Sure, absolutely.
I've thought about this a little bit this weekend, because you're not the first person, Cody, to ask that question. So I've kind of rolled it in my head. Why would individually, one by one, some of my better sources want to be sources? Why would they want? What's the incentive? I think the biggest is that correct info gets reported. Weirdly, like, people want what's happening to be reported, and a lot of times false stuff gets out there, and so there's a rush to be able to contribute. I can't speak for every, it's weird. I have one of my sources that's been pretty good to me lately. It all kind of came together because he thought I reported something incorrectly about a guy. And I connected with that guy, and we talked a little bit, and I was explaining myself, and he explained himself, and we got on the same page. And then, like, moving forward, we've shared intel. And I think that a lot of times, I also think it comes down to that. A lot of times, people that you talk to want to hear things that you might know. But at the end of the day, it's all about building relationships. I mean, I've worked in this market for 25 years. There are people that I've known for 25 years that end up being helpful. I think it's about relationships. I think it's about getting information right. And people like that. People like that the right information is being reported. And if they can contribute to that, that is not a bad thing. And I don't know. There's probably a little bit of being involved that's exhilarating for some. I don't know. Anwar, anything else you'd want to add to that? Again, for me, at the end of the day, I tend to find that most people just want the reporting to be correct, and that the information flow is correct. And that is usually the biggest incentive of anything that I can think of.
Yeah, I would definitely, add to that. And Drew asked if there's money exchanging hands for info. I've never have done that. I've never really have heard of that.
Yeah,
I've heard
either.
rumors, like maybe, but there's nothing that's ever been substantiated. Usually I think it's just people who want to get the info correct. To Ketch's point, sometimes you develop relationships with people who just want to help you out. And make sure, and with that kind of stuff. Now, look, sometimes you develop a relationship with people and they will never help you out, but they're just cool people, so it just all depends. Everyone's motivations are different at the end of the day. But
quick, the number of sources, I think this gets lost. The number of sources that we deal with, let's say, in any given year is so vast that really would be, off the top of my head, impossible to put a number on. When there were people over the weekend who were like, well, you guys will never use these sources again with regards to reporting. And it's like, well, to be completely honest, with a number of the sources that were pointing us in the direction that we went in on Thursday night, those weren't people that I think we would routinely count on as sources. But every story is a snowflake, and all of the people who are involved in that story are a snowflake. And the people that we would have went to get information on the injury status of Isaiah Nayor and Junior Angelau, and then the people that we would have went to get information about Ajay Hall as that was happening, completely different people than the people that we were talking to with regards to the quarterback decision and where we were being told it was headed from a direction standpoint. Yes, though, if the answer is, or the question is, did you guys learn any lessons? Will you be slower to go all in on what those particular sources said? Yeah.
And by the way, when he I hear what Pass Rush asked, do you still use the same sources now that helped you with the swoop story? The swoop story was correct. So there's nothing that was incorrect about the swoop story. That was correct when we reported it. It was correct when everybody else reported the exact same thing that we reported. And there's a couple of things that I just fail to, when people try to kind of bring that up. Are you really going to stand on the table and tell yourself that you don't think Charlie Strong was about to make a bad decision? Like, let's say that out loud and repeat it back to me so we can be on the same page. Are you really going to stand on the table and say, you know what? No way that he was about to make a bad decision. No way did he have to be talked out of that decision. We clearly went through there. He had to be talked out of it by Gilbert, who said, like, okay, at the end of the day, we don't want to go through this experiment anymore. And by the way, at the end of the day, it's nothing really to beat your chest about when the team finished 5-7 that season anyway. So what was really gained when it was all said and done of that competition? You're like, oh, wow. Even if you want to say someone was wrong, which is not wrong, oh, wow. So they finished 5-7 and lost to Kansas. And Michelle threw like 3 interceptions or something in that game. So, hooray. I don't even know.
Anyway. Eric in the super chat. Until Ketch said bet your house, what made you think no way on Card becoming named the starting quarterback? Last Thursday, you were saying no freaking way until it comes from Sark's mouth. Give us your thought process.
So my thought process was, realistically, there was things that happened, I think, in real time. That Thursday was a really, Ketch and I can talk, it was a fast-paced day. I mean, we were, going back and forth, different sources, this and that, trying to work on the stuff. And then we did a video immediately. And then there wasn't really time for me to just formulate all my thoughts. I think you
didn't have a chance to sit back with some Rogue products.
Correct. And really get to what my conclusion was. Because I don't know if I had my final conclusion. I had the facts of it. I don't know if I had my final conclusion. My thing while I was saying, I gotta see it. I'm just not quite sure. It was just at the end of the day, I had to ask myself, when I was asking myself in real time. So what you kind of saw is like the thought process. One, is this 100% sure? And I was like, I don't know if this is not 100%. Two, I had to start wondering, like, is he really not going to play Quinn Ewers? Like, after everything was all was said and done, at the end of the day, is he just going to not do this? And all that entails, as far as the pressure that he puts on himself, the pressure that he puts on Hudson Card, all those kind of things, because I've always said, hey, learn and grow with Quinn. So I think that's why I was just hesitant. And last and not least, as we were talking, could you see what my boy Pass Rush brought up, the swoops thing? Started getting a little PTSD at that moment. I'm like, I don't know if I can live in this world of absolutes. So I think that's where the whole thing came from, and especially the whole swoops thing and dealing with that saga is just kind of don't just be careful.
There's only this all happened roughly between like 3 and 5 o'clock. I think we had it. The report was up around 7. I wonder, full transparency, the beginning of what we were hearing on the quarterback front started with a couple of sources that Anwar had spoken with. That led me to reaching out to other sources who corroborated the story and really added some strong validity. It felt like, okay, well, we've got all 4 bases on the diamond covered with the people that we had communicated with. And I'd wondered, because I think Anwar was coming from a place where he wondered, well, what about the people that I talked to? What was all of that about? I didn't quite have the hesitancy, because Anwar and I talked about this over the weekend. I didn't have the hesitancy, and I know we got to get out, Anwar. Believe me, I do. Liverpool plays it too.
Is that why you needed to get off at 1:30?
Well, I got to wake my wife up at 1:30, and I need to make sure that the house is empty so that in 30 minutes, I can watch the game in absolute peace. Yes. If Anwar, if I hadn't been able to reach the people that you and I know that I reached, how different do you think Thursday would have been? By the time a war wound would have been written, and we'd just been leaning on a couple of people's perspectives on this versus what turned out to be 4 or 5, how different do you think the reporting would have been? In full transparency, Anwar and I have not talked about this. Like, I'm asking him a completely on-the-spot question that, if he says, I can't answer it, I haven't had time to think about it, I don't know, that could be completely fair. I'm just wondering, as we're talking about it, if I don't talk to, I think there's one person in particular that I spoke with, that if we eliminated that freaking person from the equation, how different is it?
Well, a little bit different, I would say so, because I think my whole approach to it was always going to be to couch it and just kind of to be careful with everything. So, because remember, Cash, you said, when I talked about the quarterback situation last week, you said I was using kid gloves. So I was like, I probably would have still taken the kid glove approach. It'd been very soft and gentle with it. And then when it more people started coming in, then it just kind of took off from there. So
it's a hard one, man. Everybody else would have had to have been in our shoes in that exact moment to know what we were dealing with, who we were talking with, what the perceptions of all of that was. It'll be in the book one day. One day, Quinn Ewers and Hudson Card will be long gone from here. And there will be a couple of pages dedicated to the great 2022 quarterback mistake. And I honestly think if people knew the truth on war, they would laugh. Because it's so stupid in retrospect. But anyway, let's see. Anything else? We got to really get out of here.
Let's put a ribbon and bow on it. I think there's people who have asking questions, and it's fair in this moment. And then there's also people in the chat who are saying they want to move on from it. So, guys, I'm with you. Let's put a ribbon and bow on that topic. For those, Eric, he does a super chat, so of course we're going to answer it. But we're definitely ready to move on and focus in on the season.
Well, most of the show
ever wants to be the story.
We took 10 minutes to kind of work through that a little bit. If some people feel like that's what's needed to put a final chapter onto the saga, I'm okay with that. Let's hope that tomorrow night, OB live at OB at night and Drunk Uncle on Wednesday and all the videos that we have this week, there's a lot of stuff to talk about. Here's hoping that we can just stick to that. And if you have any questions, you can always reach out directly to Anwar and I via email, DM, whatever. We'll try to keep it moving, though, from there. For myself and Anwar Richardson and the amazing people at RogueShop.com, do not forget promo code OrangeBloods for damn near everything. We need to pick a winner. Do you have somebody that you want to pick for the Gummies win today?
First of all, don't forget the shout out to Blake, by the way, our amazing producer.
Do you want to give the Gummies to Blake?
No, that's
I tried, Blake.
That's not good. I don't have one.
I think I've got one.
You got one? Okay.
Yeah.
Who is it?
Darwin Lemon.
I was thinking about Darwin. He hadn't won one before. Darwin
has. I don't think he's won one before. He's been super active lately, and I'm a fan of the name.
Okay. Darwin it is.
So Darwin, hook me up or call me or email me, gkketch@gmail.com, or reach out on Orange Bloods PM or however you need to reach us. We will get you in touch with the fine folks at rogueshop.com. Congratulations, you win the gummies. For myself and Anwar Richardson and my wife, who I have to go wake up right now, and Blake, the producer. You guys be good to each other. We'll talk to you tomorrow.